So in my last lecture, I was just discussing the Amazigh people are what is known as the Berbers, and just to say to add, I had a friend. He converted to Islam, and he came over and he brought a friend from Morocco, and they came quickly to say prayer, and then they afterwards they came out of the room and hung out with me. And the Berber gentleman was saying that he actually feels more comfortable in America as a Berber because of a kind of racism against Berbers by the Arab population, and that he felt that he was looked down upon, and he didn't feel that way here. And so I'm pointing out that there is a kind of issue that exists within Africa. From in Sudan, you see that as well, where just like white settlers that came to the United States and our controversial relationship with the natives, and the Anglo-Saxons with the natives of the British Isles, the Celts, and so on. There seems to be that dynamic in Africa as well. But just like the other places I mentioned, it's not always strictly hostile. This is my understanding. I'm going to completely say that what I'm telling you is things that I've read and discussions with people. I don't want to come off as really having a full understanding of this, but this is some aspect that I've heard brought up. And there's also a debate as the Arabs came into Africa, especially the north. I mean, North Africa and the east portion are what we'd call Arab states, but in Africa. And so they're not Middle East. They're not the Middle East. They're Africa. But at the same time, they're more culturally tied to the broader Arab world, at least the Arab population. And so there is that kind of divide within African society as well. And I've talked to a Tunisian woman that she kind of went over that as well. So when the Arab Spring happened, all these revolts that took place against dictators throughout the broader Arab world, it started in Tunisia and then took off in Egypt. This is an African thing, but it was really linked to the broader Arabic-speaking world connected to the Middle East, and especially when Islam is going to come into Egypt. Egypt, as a major African country, is also going to be really seen as a leader in the Arab world, meaning the broader Middle East world. And this is kind of a complexity of the way that the region of the north works as opposed to the south. And in Morocco, there's actually a group of people. They're called the Saharans. The name precisely is I'm lost with. But there's an ethnic group that feels that struggles for their kind of independence against the broader Moroccan society, and has or almost articulate their feelings as Palestinians do against the Israelis. And even though they're Muslim, there's an ethnic tension there. And so I'm just kind of trying to show how this is fits into these different contexts. So the Touareg people are another such Berber group, and you'll occasionally see them brought up into political discourse. Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, when he was in power, he was favorable to certain segments, disenfranchised segments of African society. And with his downfall, they've been also placed in a very complicated situation politically. And so I just kind of want to point that out. I don't have time to go over all of that, but just to draw attention to interesting culture if you want to study more on your own. Okay, So now we're moving on to a little bit of the topography. Okay. So about 20% of the land surface of the globe is Africa. Okay, so it's huge, right? We see the continent, it's large. You look at it on the map and it's massive. And so it covers different types of climates, just like United States has desert lands, and we have more in the Northwest, somewhat tropical, almost like a rainforest likeness with rain, and then you have you know the desert conditions that are also spreading in drought plagued states. But anyhow, you have tropics and desert. The Sahara is the world's largest desert. And then you have grassy areas, the savanna, which is more than half of Africa's land surface. Okay, so again, wide range of types of land, which is also going to create a wide range of cultures that are going to survive in these different little niches. African traditional societies and religion. So I don't have a lot of strong knowledge of the variations of animists that are a part of so many of the tribal groups. I was kind of talking about it before, but essentially you're having very individualized religious practices for tribes or clans, and to a certain extent some kingdoms. Again, animism is for instance seeing spirits in the trees and the mountains or things like that. And there is going to be a vast range of them of practices. My understanding is it's maybe even more vast than what we saw with the variants of religion within India, for example. And a lot of these in the tribal groups are linked to maybe smaller sections with an oral society that has people who have this knowledge, like a witch doctor, or maybe that's not even the right term I want to use, but a spiritual leader that is going to have vast knowledge of their beliefs and practices that memorized through poems or songs and so forth. Okay, so then returning back to Islamic North Africa. Okay, so this is the other side of it. Much of sub-Saharan Africa is more of the traditional African religion, African culture that we think of. If you think about National Geographic and watching somebody practicing a religion in a hut. And by the way, I want to make this very clear. Africa is not just people living in huts. There's a lot of urban centers as well. There's a lot of people who still might practice traditional African religion, but as a modern, urban, even Western educated person. So that's something that I really want to make clear as well. So having said that, returning to Egypt and the north, between 476 to 639, North Africa was isolated and is mainly populated by Berbers. But then you had Egyptian Coptic Monophysite Christianity coming in. And Monophysite Christianity, if you remember, is this, in Christianity there was this big contention about the nature of Jesus, and the Monophysites said that Jesus was always fully God at all times, even in his human form, and so you can't split any of that nature, like the Council of Chalcedon, if we remember this in our topic of Christianity. And it was, and as we remember, Egypt was a major center of Christianity through its controversies and its battle for power between different patriarchs that were a part of the broader Christian world. And because that this Monophysite Christianity was persecuted by the broader Christian world, the Christian world was not unified, and as the Arab Muslims came into Egypt, they were able to take this lack of Christian unity, take advantage of it, and get a foothold into Egypt very quickly. And so between 639 and 642, Arabs conquer Egypt. And basically more than 1 million Arabs moved into Egypt by 750. And within a century, less than 1/3 of Egyptians remained Christian. Okay. And so this really makes up the composition of Egypt. Just for example, I will end here and return to this topic for the next lecture.